there's some digital superintelligence apocalypse scenario, it would probably follow people to Mars. Not necessarily, because of that utility function. If it simply has utility function that is arbitrarily confined to Earth, it would be totally fine doing that. There's two main reasons for Mars or becoming a multiplanetary. One is the defensive reason. It's life insurance for life as a whole, and there's some value to having that in terms of a small percentage of our economic output, like let's say 0.5% or maybe even less of our economic output, to ensure that the light of consciousness as we know it propagates into the future for a much longer period of time. And so there's that defensive reason. And this is the first time in 4.5 billion years since Earth was first formed that it's been possible for life to move to another planet, to become multiplanetary. And that window may be open for a long time, or it may be open for a short time. I'm actually quite an optimistic person, so I'm hopeful that it'll be open for a long time, but maybe it'll be open for a short time, in which case we should take action now and not delay. I'll just say the other reason, which I actually find personally more motivating with respect to Mars, which is that it would just be the greatest adventure ever, and very exciting. And I think we need things in life that are exciting and inspiring. It can't just be about solving some awful problem. There have to be reasons to get up in the morning. I think from what I've heard of Oculus Rift and some of the other immersive technologies, that it's quite transformative. You really feel like you're there. And then when you come out of it, it feels like reality isn't real. So I think we'll see probably less physical movement in the future as a result of the virtual reality stuff. Well, I mean, there's some interesting things here on the virtual reality front. I mean, just on the whole notion of a simulation, which is that if you extrapolate into the future and say, well, how good, let's say, will video games be in 100 or 200 or 1,000 years from now? If there's continued improvement and you're in a full body haptic suit with a sort of surround vision, and it becomes, beyond a certain resolution, indistinguishable from reality. And there are likely to be millions, maybe billions of such simulations. So then what are the odds that we're actually in base reality? Isn't it 1 in billions? I mean, where we are right now is I think on the SpaceX front, we've made evolutionary but not revolutionary progress. We're hoping to make revolutionary progress in the coming years. But the key breakthrough that we're aiming for is to be able to have the rocket booster come back and land. It's been expendable rockets up till now, really, except that the space shuttle was partly reusable, but it was extremely difficult to refurbish for flight. 10,000 people needed to work 9 months to refurbish the space shuttle. So what we really need is rapid and complete reusability, like an aircraft or a car or really any mode of transport besides rockets is reusable. You know, horse, bicycle, you can think of almost anything. But imagine if that mode of transport was not reusable. So very, very unfortunate in the case of the horse. But even like in cars, like if you could use a car once and you have to buy a new car every time you took a journey, odds are you would not buy many cars because it would be very expensive. So reusability essentially opens the door for reducing the cost of spaceflight by a factor of 100 or more. Yeah, I mean, in the beginning there was no government. I funded SpaceX entirely with the proceeds from PayPal. So first government contract about 5 or 6 years after starting the company from NASA. But I should say about NASA's maybe a quarter of our flights, 3/4 are commercial. I'm not exactly sure whether we're at the right number for basic research. I mean, I'm a fan of research, so I'd be in favor of spending more money on that, allocating more resources to basic research. But I think the government's doing quite a bit. I mean, NASA's doing a lot of things. We've obviously got the rovers on Mars. We've got things like the Hubble telescope, the upcoming James Webb telescope. There are planetary probes and Earth science missions launching all the time. So NASA's doing quite a lot. I'm not sure about the flying cars. I mean, that's not to say I don't think there should be flying cars. I mean, but if the sky was full of cars flying all over the place, then it would affect how things look. It would affect the skyline, and it would be noisier, and there would be a greater probability of something falling on your head. You know, those are not good things. On the other hand, that you could be able to go from one place to another faster. But I think actually, if you eliminate the choke points in cities, then there's really not that much traffic outside of the choke points. So you look at sort of in suburban streets, you don't see a lot of, the traffic doesn't choke things. It's really on the highways and major arteries, and it's because the cities grew way bigger than them. What Tesla's going to do is stationary storage in a very large-scale way, because it's very important to pair battery packs with solar power, and for wind it's even more important. So with the gigafactory that we're creating in Nevada, we're going to create many, probably tens of gigawatt hours per year of stationary storage on the battery front. So that, yeah, there's a lot coming for sure. Yeah, things seem to be going, fairly well in China. We've had a very enthusiastic response. And yeah, I think long term, it seems likely that China would be the biggest market for Tesla. So yeah, I'm really optimistic about things over there. It seems likely that, it would likely be bigger than North America, yeah, in the long term. The government's been pretty good. I mean, there's certainly, in terms of the incentive structure, it does favor local production. But overall, it's, I think it's not been too much of an issue. The government's been great so far. This may sound trite, but I honestly think tunnels should be given a lot more consideration. So that, if you look at a city, we have all these apartment buildings and office buildings, and they're on many levels. Like they're an average of, in Manhattan, I don't know what is an average of like 30 stories or something like that. But then you've got a street, which is 1 story. This is an obvious issue. Like you have a 30-to-1 ratio of, yeah, and you can have tunnels the tunnels don't have to follow the buildings. They can go diagonally.
Through the basement, yeah.
Yeah, and you can have as many levels as you want. It's really just the cost of building the tunnels. But really, tunnels are a hole in the ground. Like, how hard can it really be? It seems like if some entrepreneurs put their effort into building tunnels, within cities, it's sort of tunnels and tubes. For long distance travel, I really think that the vertical takeoff and landing, electric supersonic aircraft is the way to go. I think it's very doable.
I think we should be maybe a little bit concerned about actually becoming too much of a single world government. If I may say that we want to avoid creating a civilizational risk by having, frankly, this may sound a little odd, too much cooperation between governments. If you look at, say, at history and the rise and fall of civilizations, really all throughout history, civilizations have risen and fallen, but it hasn't meant the doom of humanity as a whole, because there have been all these separate civilizations that were separated by great distances. And so, say like while Rome was falling, Islam was rising. And so you had like the sort of caliphate doing incredibly well while Rome was doing terribly. And that actually ended up being a source of preservation of knowledge and many scientific advancements. And so I think we want to be a little bit cautious about being too much of a single civilization, because if we are too much of a single civilization, then the whole thing may collapse. Obviously not suggesting war or anything like that, but I think we want to be a little bit wary of actually cooperating too much. It sounds a little odd, but we want to have some amount of civilizational diversity such that if something does go wrong with some part of civilization, that the whole thing doesn't collapse and humanity keeps moving forward.
The global economy, let alone the environment, is simply too complex to model. It is for this reason, fundamentally, that we have and require a free market system. The free market is the best model of the environment we can generate. Not only is the free market the best model of the environment we can generate, it is and will remain the best model that can, in principle, ever be generated. With its widely distributed computations, constituting the totality of the choices of 7 billion people, it simply cannot be improved upon, certainly not by presumptuous, power-mad globalist utopians who think that hiring someone, mysteriously manipulating a few carefully chosen numbers, and then reading the summarized output means genuine contact with the reality of the future and the generation of knowledge unassailable on both the ethical and the practical front. We're not evil just because we don't believe that you are omniscient. We're not evil just because we don't want you to assume omnipotence and omnipresence too. There is simply no pathway forward to the green and equitable utopia that necessitates the further impoverishment of the already poor, the compulsion of the working class, or the sacrifice of economic security and opportunity on the food, energy, and housing front. There is simply no pathway forward to the global utopia you hypothetically value that is dependent on force. And even if there was, what gives you the right to enforce your demands? on other sovereign citizens equal in value to you. An alternative solution. A better way forward would be to prioritize the problems that beset all of us on this still green, functional, and increasingly abundant planet, with the requisite focus and attention demanded of a true political class elected by the people, capable of and willing to look at everything, trying to fix where necessary, trying to maintain as much freedom and autonomy as possible, and stop simply capitalizing narcissistically on the mere appearance of action, knowledge, and virtue. We should obtain true cooperative consent from those affected, farmers, truckers, working class people, who have turned in irritated desperation to figures such as Trump, and work with them rather than forbidding them with your power or improving them so they will be finally worthy of your time and attention. Help replace dirty energy with clean if you must, but do it on your own dime. And make sure that the results are cheap and plentiful if you want to help the poor and the planet. The warning bells are ringing. Listen to them before they turn into sirens. We will not advance without resistance through the straits of your enforced privation. We will not allow you to steal and destroy the energy that makes our lives bearable and that produces our food and shelter and housing and the sporadic delights of modern life, just to address your existential terror, particularly when it will fail to do so in any case. We will not allow our children to be criticized first for having the temerity to merely exist, and then deprived of the prosperous and opportunity-rich future we strived so hard to prepare for them. We remain unconvinced that your frightened and self-congratulatory moralizing and intellectual pretension, ignorance of the limits of statistics, and misuse of arithmetic